Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving into a brand new work, so we are going to lay some brand new groundwork. This is the work of Rudolf Steiner. It is Theosophy. He has several works. We will probably dig into more than one of them, but this is one of those that we are going to dig into first. Before we do, though, we're going to talk about before we do, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there are several playlists linked in this corner in the box down below, along with the source material, so that you can go back and understand where I am coming from. I try to outline in the beginning of the playlist where I stand on things and why I stand there. I believe in God, I believe in magic, and I don't find those two to be irreconcilable. I believe that God gives you the ability to do magic. I believe that some of these people were on the path to try and find the way to do that, and that they got distracted along the way. Steiner appears to be one of those people who were earnestly searching. He has his detractors, people who accuse him of pseudoscience and people who accuse him of pseudo-history. But while Wikipedia is a great place to begin, it is never the place to get all of the information from. It is a good place to go through and see that he was hated by the Nazis, probably with very good reason. They had people attempt to take his life. He devoted his life to trying to make people better, so that normally brings out the evil out of the woodwork. Today, I'm not going to spend as much time with his history as I normally would, because there is a lot of introduction to go through. This is probably going to be a long video because we have 3 forewords and 2 introductions to read through, and that should give us most of the groundwork for what we need, right? Normally, I like to go through and this is his history but it is enough to know that people doubted him greatly. I don't, right? I take these people at their word. That doesn't mean that I am going to fully believe everything that they say, but I believe that he was earnestly trying to relay information in a clear and concise manner. And so I am going to try to pick through and see if there's anything that I disagree with, anything that I know to be a little bit different, anything that I know to be not expounded upon enough, and hopefully bring a little bit of light and clarity to the situations. With that being said, we are going to dive in and begin the first foreword. There are 3 forewords. This is the translator's foreword from Rudolf Steiner's Theosophy. Let's get into the text. The translator's foreword. I can't make this any bigger. Like, I wanted it to take up more of the page, but I can't do that. I don't have the technical skills, I guess. It is significant that the movement of thought in our time It is significant of the movement of thought in our time that, although the previous works of Rudolf Steiner, Ph.D., Vienna, such as his penetrating and suggestive Erkenntnis theory, the theory of knowledge, his works in the field of philosophy, such as Wahrheit and Wissenschaft, truth and science, and his volumes on the natural science of Goethe, I don't know how to pronounce that, are well known in Germany. It is another class of books by him, Die Mystik, mysticism, Das Christentum als Mystik Tatsache, Christianity as a fact in mysticism, and his distinctly theosophic writings, which are to first be called for by foreign readers in their own language. This work, though now appearing for the first time in English dress, has not only passed into 3 editions in Germany, but has been translated into Russian, Swedish, Dutch, Czechish, and Italian, while a French translation is being prepared. If it were perhaps well to mention that in this work the words know and knowledge, when used in reference to the supersensible worlds, involve actual experience of them gained by man through his higher organs of perception. That is how I refer to it as well. If I say that I know something, it is because I have experienced it. If I say that I think it, I haven't. The names chosen by the author to describe the higher bodies of man and other theosophic facts have been, as far as possible, retained here. Readers will find that they revert with primitive strength to the ancient power of names and are word pictures and also mnemonics of what they represent. They thus constitute distinct forces too valuable to be withheld from the English reading public. Grateful acknowledgment must be expressed here to IMM for her chivalrous help, which indeed made this translation possible, and to others who have rendered invaluable and willing assistance. And so that's the first one. And then we have the preface to the first edition. This book will give a description of some of the regions of the supersensible world. The reader who is willing to admit the existence of the sensible world will only regard this delineation as a mere unreal production of the imagination. He, however, who looks for paths that lead beyond this world of senses will soon learn to understand that human life only gains in worth and significance through sight into another world. Such a man will not, as many fear, be estranged from the real world, through this new power of vision. For only through it does he learn to stand fast and firm in this life. He learns to know the causes of life, while without it he gropes through like a blind man through their effects. Only through the understanding of the supersensible does the sensible, real, acquire meaning. One, therefore, becomes more, and not less, fit for life through this understanding. Only he who understands life can become a truly practical man. The author of this book describes nothing to which he cannot bear witness from experience, that kind of experience which one has in these regions. Only that which, in this sense, has been personally experienced will be dealt with. One cannot read this book as one is accustomed ordinarily to read books at the present day. In certain respects, every page and even many a sentence will have to be worked out by the reader. This has been intentionally aimed at, for only in this way can the book become to the reader what it ought to become. He who merely reads it through will not have read it at all. Its truths must be experienced, lived. Only in this sense has Theosophy any value. The book cannot be judged from the standpoint of science if the point of view adopted in forming such a judgment is not gained from the book itself. If the critic will adopt this point of view, he will certainly see that the presentation of the facts given in this book will in no way conflict with the true scientific methods. The author is satisfied that he has been on the alert not to come into conflict with his own scientific scrupulousness, even by a single word. Those who feel more drawn to another method of searching after the truth here will set forth will find one in my Philosophie der Freiheit, Philosophy of Freedom, Berlin, 1892. The lines of thought taken in these two books, though different, lead to the same goal. For the understanding of the one, the other is by no means necessary, although undoubtedly helpful for some persons. He who looks for ultimate truth in this book will, perhaps, lay it aside unsatisfied. The primary intention of the author has been to give the fundamental truths underlying the whole domain of theosophy. It lies in the very nature of man to ask at once about the beginning and the end of the world, the purpose of existence, and the nature and being of God. Anyone, however, who looks not for mere phrases and concepts for the intellect, but for a real understanding of life, knows that in a work which deals with the elements of wisdom, things may not be said which belong to the higher stages of wisdom. It is, indeed, only through a comprehension of these elements that it becomes clear how higher questions should be asked. In another work, forming a continuation of this one, namely, in the author's Die Geheimwissenschaft, I don't speak German, in Umriss, an outline of the occult science, further particulars on the subject here dealt with will be found. And again, I am going to note, with no reservations whatsoever, that I am going to attempt to undo that obscurity that is implied there, right? It is saying that these are things that you have to study. Well, we're going to do that together. We're going to stop. We're going to talk about, we're going to discuss the various things that are brought to light by the text. I do have a little bit more knowledge than most people do on these things, and so I have a little bit of clarity that I can cast upon the things that are written. And so I will be doing that in this study. The next video will more than likely start out with a level of responsibility talk. So Just wanted to point that out, right? That is what we're doing here, is intentionally removing that veil. Now, they don't have the second edition preface in here, but they do have the third, so we're going to go ahead and read the preface to the third edition. On the appearance of the second edition of this book, occasion was taken to preface a few remarks which may also be said with regard to this third edition. Amplifications and extensions, which seem to me important for the more exact description of what is being presented, have again been inserted, but in no case have essential alterations of what was contained in the first and second editions seem necessary. What was said in the first appearance of the book regarding its aim, and what was added in the second edition, also require, at present, no alteration. In the preface to the second edition, the following supplementary remarks were inserted. Anyone who at the present time gives a description of the supersensible facts ought to be quite clear on 2 points. The first is that our age requires the cultivation of the different branches of supersensible knowledge. The other is that the intellectual and spiritual life of the day is full of ideas and feelings which make such a description appear to many an absolute chaos of fantastic notions and dreams. The present age requires knowledge of the supersensible because all that a man can come to know by current methods about the world and life arouses in him numerous questions which can only be answered by means of supersensible truths. For one ought not to deceive oneself in regard to the fact that the information concerning the fundamental truth of existence given within the intellectual and spiritual currents of today is, for the souls that feel deeply, a source not of answers but of questions regarding the great problems of the universe and of life. Some people may, for a time, hold firmly to the opinion that they can find a solution of the problems of existence within the results of strictly scientific facts, and within the conclusions of this or that thinker of the day. But when the soul goes into those depths into which it must go if it is to understand itself, what at first seemed to be a solution becomes evident as being only the incentive to the true question. And an answer to this question is not intended to be brought forward merely as a response to human curiosity. On it, rather, depend the inner calm and completeness of the soul life. The attainment of such an answer does not satisfy merely the thirst for knowledge. It makes a man capable of practical work and fitted for the duties of life, while the lack of a solution to these questions lames his soul, and finally his body also. In fact, the knowledge of the supersensible is not merely something that meets a theoretical requirement. It supplies a method for leading a truly practical life. Exactly on account of the nature of the intellectual and spiritual life of the present time, therefore, Theosophy is a domain of knowledge, indispensable for our age. On the other hand, it is an evident fact that many today reject most strongly what they most sorely need. The dominating influence exercised by many theories built up on the basis of exact scientific experience is so great on some people that they cannot do otherwise than regard the contents of a book like this as a boundless absurdity. The exponent of supersensible truths can view such facts entirely free from any illusions. People will certainly be prone to demand from him that he should give irrefutable proofs for what he states, but they do not realize that in doing this they are the victims of a misconception, for they demand, although unconsciously, not the proofs lying within the things themselves, but those which they personally are willing to recognize, or are in a condition to recognize. The author of this work knows that it contains nothing that any person taking his stand on the basis of the natural science of the present day will be unable to accept. He knows that all the requirements for natural science can be complied with, and for this very reason, the method adopted here of presenting the facts of the supersensible world supplies its own justification. In fact, the manner in which a true natural science approaches and deals with the subject is the very one in full harmony with this presentation. and anyone accustomed to think in that manner will be moved by many a discussion to feel in the way characterized in Goethe's deep and true saying. A false teaching does not offer any opening to refutation, for it is, in fact, based on the conviction that the false is true. Discussions are fruitless with those who will only allow such proofs to weigh with them as fit in with their own manner of thinking. He who knows the true essence of what is called proving a matter sees clearly that the human soul finds truth by other ways than discussion. It is with these thoughts in mind that the author hands over this book for publication in its second edition. Unfortunately, too long a time has elapsed between the date at which the second edition was exhausted and the appearance of this third edition. Pressing work of other kinds in the domain to which this book is devoted delayed the author in the examination he wished to give the book, and prevented its appearing as soon as he hoped. So, what we have here is him letting you know that I have a saying, right? I say it all the time. I call it my axiom. Arguing with the willfully ignorant is like pissing into the wind. You get it out there, but you just wind up pissy. It's the same for this, right? If you are fully convinced that there is no such thing as the metaphysical, there is no supersensible, there is no electromagnetics guiding the harmonics of life, then you will never pick up this knowledge. And that is fine. This isn't for you. I am here for those who do believe. I am here for those who have the capacity to understand that God is a wonderful thing, and that He created you to be a wonderful thing, and that He gave you a lot of tools. Now, some of those tools you're aware of. Your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth. Those are tools. Those are for you to use. Those are for you to explore the world around you. The sense of touch lets you know when things are there, but you don't ever actually touch anything. The sense of sight is there for you to explore all of the things that are around, but you don't ever actually even see anything. You see the reflections of things. You see what the things are when the part of them has taken all of the colors out of the light. You're not seeing a purple shirt. Like, it looks kind of blue in the camera, but it's purple. You're seeing the absence of purple in the shirt. It's absorbing every other color except purple, and it's reflecting the purple back to you. So you're seeing the purple. But beyond that, what you see, the reflections that you see, are only half of what your eyes even actually do. Your eyes emit light. They have recently discovered this, but if you set up the cameras correctly in a dark room, your eyes actually produce light. It comes out from you, and that is a part of that mysterious, wonderful thing that God created you with, the extra ability to understand and to know that light coming out of your eyes is the same as the toroid that comes out of your mouth. It is a creative force given to you to be able to do in your life wonderful things. But you have to believe that it is a possibility. I have been healed by the direction of this energy, this light that comes out of my eyes, right? You can move that. It is, when it comes out of your eyes, it is through the filter of the pineal gland, which is located, if you draw a line between your eyes right here and to where the base of your skull comes down and connects. And then you go just above the ears, behind the temples, and you draw a line that way. Where that cross is, that's your pineal gland. That is the part of you that does this. That is the part of you that the world has convinced you that drinking water will calcify. Well, it doesn't. There is no way that the mortal coil here can limit the spiritual thing that God gave you. But if they can convince you that that's true, then it becomes a truth to you. If I can convince you that it is true, that you have these powers, it will become true to you. And you will be able to do that. And part of that is learning how to do it correctly. Because you can hurt yourself with this. You can. I give that warning freely all the time. You have to be careful. There are 8 laws of creation, and you have to pay attention to all 8 laws of creation. You have to live your life in accordance with the 8 laws of creation. If you want to produce productive results from this. Now, that part is important, but the work to do it, that's important too. You have to pray, you have to fast, you have to meditate. You have to learn how to manipulate the energy inside of yourself before you ever attempt to project it or to speak it. You have to learn how to deal with your regulation inside first, and that's what he was talking about here. It is a way to improve yourself exponentially. Not just by doing magic, although that is a possibility. Manifestation is a real thing. Healing yourself is a real thing. But the regulation that is involved with learning how to control yourself, to get control of the 7 internal and the 1 external chakras, that internal process changes who you are on a fundamental level. It refines you into a tool that you can use to see more than is. Theosophy. Introduction. When Johann Gottlieb Fichte, in the autumn of 1813, gave to the world his Introduction to the Science of Knowledge, as the right fruit of a life wholly devoted to the service of truth, he said at the very beginning, "This science presupposes an entirely new inner sense organ, or instrument, by means of which there is revealed a new world which does not exist for the ordinary man." And he proceeded to give the following comparison to show how incomprehensible this doctrine of his must be when judged by means of conceptions founded in the ordinary senses. Think of a world of people born blind, who therefore know only those objects and relations which exist through the sense of touch. Go among them and speak to them of colors, and the other relations of which only exist through light and for the sense of sight. Either you convey nothing to their minds, and this is the more fortunate if they tell you so, for you will in that way quickly notice the mistake, and if unable to open their eyes, will cease the useless speaking. Now those who speak to people about such things as Fichte deals with in this instance find themselves only too often in a position like that of a man who can see among those born blind. But these are things that refer to man's true being and highest goal, and to believe it necessary to cease the useless speaking would amount to despairing of humanity. On the contrary, one should not for one moment doubt the possibility of opening the eyes of everyone to these things, provided that he is in earnest on the matter. On this supposition have all those written and spoken who felt that within themselves the inner sense instrument had grown, by which they were able to know the true nature and being of man, which is hidden from the outer senses. This is why, from the most ancient times, such a hidden wisdom has been again and again spoken of. Those who have grasped something of it feel just as sure of their possession as people with normal eyes feel sure that they possess the conception of color. For them, this hidden wisdom requires no proof. They know that it also they know also that it requires no proof for any other person who, like themselves, have unfolded the higher sense. Such a one can speak as a traveler can about America to people who have not themselves seen their country, but who can form a conception of it because they would see all that he has seen if the opportunity presented itself to them. But not only to such has the investigator of the higher truth to speak, he must address his words to all mankind, for he has to make known things that concern all humanity. Indeed, he knows that without a knowledge of these things, no one can, in the true sense of the word, be a human being. And he speaks to all mankind because he knows that there are different grades of understanding for what he has to say. He knows that even those who are still far from the moment in which they will themselves be capable of spiritual investigation can bring a certain measure of understanding to meet him. For a feeling for truth and the power of understanding, it is inherent in every human being. And to this understanding, which can flash forth in every healthy soul, he in the first place addresses himself. He also knows that in this understanding there is a force which, little by little, must lead to the higher grades of knowledge. This feeling, which perhaps at first sees nothing at all of that which is told it, is itself the magician, which opens the eye of the spirit. In darkness, this feeling stirs. The soul does not see, but through this feeling it is seized by the power of the truth. And then the truth will gradually draw nearer to the soul and open it in the higher sense. For one person it may take a longer, for another a shorter time, but everyone who has the patience and endurance reaches this goal. For although not every physical eye can be operated on, every spiritual eye can be opened, and when it will be opened is only a question of time. I disagree with that. I think that some people are so blocked off that they are unable to even facilitate themselves in the knowledge that it would take, right? There is a level of commitment that is required to do these things. Now, that's not to say that your eye can't open spontaneously, but for most people, it is going to be an effort of will. It is something that you have to seek, right? You have to knock. You have to go and try to get the information. It's more than likely not just going to present itself to you. That process is founded upon prayer, fasting, and meditation. Right? There's a reason why every great religion ever has had those three things as part of it. Right? Now, I'm not going to tell you which God you have to pray to. My God is the God of all. He is the creator of all things. He is the one. That is what I believe. You don't have to believe that. You can have your intermediaries. You can have your various prophets throughout the ages. You can have your various magical people throughout the ages. I believe that those people are doing the same thing that we're talking about here, that they have gone through the process. They have opened their eyes. They have a little bit more knowledge to dispense. I do not believe, however, that any of them got it exactly right. I am probably not exactly right either. I don't claim to be the end-all be-all, but I do have a little bit more knowledge. I do have the functionality, right? I have had this work for me in a clearly trackable, definable, discernible way. Right? I had a cyst in my throat, and through these processes, God allowed me to remove that from myself. It is through the processes talked about here that I was able to do that. It is through those processes that I am working some wonderful things within myself, external from that, which I can't even get into right now because it will mess with other things, and I can't have that happen right now. But there are miracles happening in my life every day. It is a wonderful thing, but it is because I have taken the intentionality to do this. If you don't, then your eye will not be open. Not until the end. Right? When we go home, everybody's eyes open, and then yes, in that way, then every spiritual eye can be open. But some people, it will never happen. Some people are just too tied into the here and now that they cannot conceptualize the eternal. Some people are so wrapped up in the prove it to me that they will never be able to accept that some things are only a feeling. Now, I can relay my experiences to you, but I cannot give my experiences to you. I can tell you the things that have happened to me, and you can either accept them or dismiss them. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to tell you. I'm here to let you know, yes, this is possible. Unequivocally, with no doubt whatsoever, it is possible to do magic, at least within yourself. Right? I don't claim to be able to cast a firebolt over there. I claim to be able to manipulate the electromagnetic energies within myself. I have done that. I believe that there are 7 internal points and 1 external point that allows you to do that, and there are processes by which it is possible. And I am hoping that through this study we will reveal some of those. Right? I'm a real bad one for details. What that means is I'm good at giving you the general concept and then not extrapolating and not saying the things that need to be said about those things. And so this is a process by which I am able to see the detail that I would overlook. If I was to sit down and write a book, it would be incomplete. I am horrible with details. But if someone else is saying a thing, then I can fill in those details. And that's what I'm trying to do in these studies, in these Esoterica studies. All of them will be geared towards that. And so we will have this discussion in some manner in every single one of the introductions. Right? That is, we are here to discuss doing magic. If that makes you uncomfortable, you're in the wrong place. If it makes you uncomfortable to believe that God gave you the ability to do magic, then you didn't read the New Testament. Let's get back into the text. Erudition and scientific training are not essential to the unfolding of this higher sense. It can be developed in the simple-minded person just as in the scientists of high standing. Indeed, what is often called at the present time the only true science can, for the attainment of this goal, be a hindrance rather than a help. For this science too often permits to be considered real only what is perceptible to the ordinary senses. And however great its merit is in regard to the knowledge of that reality, it creates at the same time a mass of prejudices which close the approach to higher realities. That is the truth. In objection to what is said here, it is often brought forward that insurmountable limits have been once and forever set to human knowledge, and that since one cannot pass beyond these limits, all branches of investigation and knowledge which do not take them into account must be rejected. And a person who wishes to make assertions about things which many regard as proved to lie beyond the limits that have been set to human capacities of knowledge is looked upon as highly presumptuous. Go ahead and call me whatever words you want. Like, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to be here. I am for those who do believe. Those who make such objections entirely disregard the fact that a development of the human powers of knowledge has to precede the higher knowledge. What lies beyond the limits of knowledge before such a development is, after the awakening of faculties slumbering in each human being, entirely within the realm of knowledge. One point in this connection must, indeed, not be neglected. One could say, of what use is it to speak of people about things for which their powers of knowledge are not yet awakened, and which are therefore still closed to them? But that is also the wrong way to look at it. One requires certain faculties to find out the things referred to, but if, after having been found out, they are made known, every person can understand who is willing to bring upon them unprejudiced logic and a healthy instinct for truth. Again, what I am trying to do here. In this book, the things made known are of no other kind than such as can produce the impression that through the riddle of human life and the phenomena of the world find a satisfying explanation. This it can do on anyone who allows thinking that looks at all sides of a subject and is unclouded by prejudice, and a feeling for truth that is free and sets no reserves to take effect. Let one merely place himself in the attitude of asking, if the things that are asserted here are true, do they afford a satisfying explanation of life? And one will find that the life of each human being supplies the confirmation. In order to be a teacher in these higher regions of existence, it is by no means sufficient that a person has developed the sense for them. For that purpose, science is necessary just as much as it is necessary for the teacher calling in the region of ordinary reality. Higher seeing alone makes a knower in the spirit just as little as healthy sense organs make a scholar in regard to the sensible realities. And because in truth all reality, the lower and the higher spiritual, are only two sides of one and the same fundamental essence, anyone who is unlearned in the lower branches of knowledge will, as a rule, remain so in regard to the higher. This fact creates a feeling of responsibility that is immeasurable in him who, by a spiritual call, is destined to be a teacher in the spiritual regions of existence. That's why I tell you about the 8 laws of creation so very frequently. It creates in him humility and reservedness, but it should deter no one from occupying himself with the higher truths. Not even him whose other circumstances of life afford no opportunity for the study of ordinary science. For one can, indeed, fail one's task as a human being without understanding anything of botany, zoology, mathematics, and other sciences. But one cannot, in the full sense of the word, be a human being without having, in some way or other, come near to a perception of the nature and destination of man revealed in the higher wisdom. The highest to which a man is able to look up, he calls the divine, and he has, in some way or other, to bring his highest destination into connection with this divinity. For this reason, the higher wisdom, which reveals to him his own being, and with it his destination, may very well be called divine wisdom or Theosophy. From the point of view here indicated, there will be sketched in this book an outline of the theosophical interpretation of the universe. The writer of it will present nothing that is not a fact for him, in the same sense as an experience of the outer world is a fact for eyes and ears and the ordinary intelligence. Indeed, experiences will be dealt with which become accessible to each person who is determined to tread the path of knowledge described in a special section of this work. And so that wraps up the first introduction, and then we have a whole nother introduction. But that was basically like a mission statement, right? That is basically the same thing that I do. That's why we lay the groundwork here, so that you can see whether or not you want to watch the other things that are coming, because I am trying to cast a little bit of enlightenment out there. I'm throwing it out like candy. Everywhere that I have a place where I can more fully clarify something, I try to do so. We did that all the way through the Secret Teachings of All Ages. We did that through the Hermes Trismegistus. We did that to Plato. We did that, we've done that repeatedly. That is what we are doing. And so I absolutely commiserate with that. Like, I understand completely what he's talking about. If you are not willing to learn it, there is no way you will ever learn it. And the world today is very much aligned with that's dismissible, right? Oh, well, you had this subjective experience, so it's a dismissible thing. I do not believe that at all. The subjectivity of our reality is a thing that is intrinsic to the human experience. How you feel about a situation makes all the difference about it in the world. How your perception lies in the trial means whether it is a miserable trial or whether it is a happy trial. You can be the exact same experience, but your mindset makes the difference in what it is. It is the same here. If you are rigidly tied into the scientific procedure, that can be beneficial, but you are probably going to miss the benefits. You are probably going to overlook it by your dismissal of the experiential. I can tell you about my experience. I can't give you my experience. You have to go forward and experience it for yourself. I have had the unfolding. I have had the revelation. I have had the disclosing of the information. And so I am here to try and give it away. That's what I do. I use it for me, and then I give it to other people. And that makes me happy. So it's what I do, and it's why we're here. Let's dive into the second introduction. Wait, why does that say the Constitution? Let me make sure I got that right. Wait, where'd it go? Right there. Okay, yeah. This says chapter 1, but at the bottom it said introduction, so we're going to take this as an introduction. If it's a chapter 1, it'll just fade into the rest. Chapter 1, the Constitution of the Human Being. The following words of Goethe's describe, in a beautiful manner, the starting point of one of the ways by which the constitution of man can be known. When a person first becomes aware of the objects surrounding him, he observes them in relation to himself, and rightly so, for his whole fate depends on whether they please or displease him, attract or repel, help or harm him. This quite natural way of looking at and judging things appear to be as easy as it is necessary. Nevertheless, a person is exposed through it to 1,000 errors, which often cause him to shame and embitter his life. A far more difficult task do those undertake whose keen desire for knowledge urges them to strive to observe the objects of nature in themselves, and in their relations to each other. For they soon miss the gauge which helped them when they, as persons, regarded the objects in reference to themselves personally. They lack the gauge of pleasure and displeasure, attraction and repulsion, usefulness and harmfulness. This gauge they have to renounce entirely. They should, as dispassionate and, so to speak, divine beings, seek and examine what is and not what gratifies. Thus, a true botanist should not be affected either by the beauty or the usefulness of the plants. He has to study their structure and their relation to the rest of the vegetable kingdom, and just as they are one and all enticed forth and shone upon by the sun, so should he, with an equable, quiet glance, look at and survey them all, and obtain the gauge for this knowledge, the data for his deductions, not out of himself, but from within the circle of things which he observes. The thought thus expressed by Goethe directs attention to three kinds of things. First, the objects concerning which information continually flows to man through the doors of his senses, those that he touches, smells, tastes, sees, and hears. Second, the impressions which these make on him, and which record themselves as his pleasure and displeasure, his desire or abhorrence, according as he finds one harmonious, another inharmonious, one useful, another harmful. Third, the knowledge and the experiences which he, as a, so to speak, divine being, gains concerning the objects, the secrets of their activities and their being which unveil themselves to him. These three regions are distinctly separate in human life, and man thereby becomes aware that he is interwoven with the world in a threefold way. The first way is something that he finds present and accepts as a given fact. Through the second way, he makes the world into his own affair, into something that has a significance for himself. The third way he regards as a goal towards which he has unceasingly to strive. That is a good way of looking at it, right? This is the facts of the thing. This is what I would like it to be, and this is how I go about doing that. Why does the world appear to man in this threefold way? The simplest consideration will explain that. I cross a meadow covered with flowers. The flowers make their colors known to me through my eyes. This is the fact which I accept as given. I rejoice in the splendor of the colors. Through this, I turn the fact into an affair of my own. By means of my feelings, I link the flowers with my own existence. A year after, I go again over the same meadow. Other flowers are there. New joy arises in me through them. My joy of the former year will appear as a memory. It is in me. The object which aroused it in me is gone. But the flowers which I now see are the same species as those I saw the year before. They have grown in accordance with the same laws as did the others. If I have enlightened myself regarding the species and these laws, I find them again in the flowers of this year as I recognize them in those of the former year. And I shall, perhaps, muse as follows: the flowers of last year are gone. My joy in them remains only in my remembrance. It is bound up with my existence alone. That, however, which I recognized in the flowers of the former year and recognize again this year will remain as long as such flowers grow. That is something that revealed itself to me, but which is not dependent on my existence in the same way that my joy is. My feeling of joy remains in me. The laws, the being of the flowers remain outside of me in the world. Man continually links himself in this threefold way with the things of the world. One should not, for the time being, read anything into this fact, but merely take it as it presents itself. It makes it evident that man has three sides to his nature. This and nothing else will for the present be indicated here by the three words: body, soul, and spirit. He who connects any preconceived meanings or even hypotheses with these three words will necessarily misunderstand the following explanations. By body is here meant that by which the things in the environment of a man reveal themselves to him, as in the example just cited, the flowers of the meadow. But the word soul is signified that by which he links the things to his own being, through which he experiences pleasure and displeasure, desire and aversion, joy and sorrow. By spirit is meant that which becomes manifest in him, when, as Goethe expressed it, he looks at things as a, so to speak, divine being. In this sense, the human body consists of body, soul, and spirit. We're going to go ahead and pause here because I am fully on board with this, right? Now, here's my explanation for the body, soul, and spirit, right? I believe in the Trinity fully. I believe that you are a divine expression of God, that he has taken an individualized piece of himself and he gave it to you in the form of a soul that resides in your mind. It is the part that makes the decisions for what you are going to do. Now, he gave that soul a body, and he allows you to use that body to do the various things of this world. But the changing of the things belongs to the spirit. When you eat food, it is converted into fuel for your body by the spirit. When you breathe air, it is the spirit that takes the oxygen out and puts carbon dioxide back into it, so that when you exhale it, you are getting rid of the poison that your body creates naturally through the use of the spirit. It is the part that keeps your heart beating whenever you're asleep. It is the part that keeps you breathing. It is the part that allows you to see. The becoming is the spirit. It is the changing from the now into the next. It is the becoming of the new. That is the spirit. So you have the body, which is the meat suit. You have the soul, which is the part that makes the decisions. And then you have the spirit, which is the part of God that allows things to happen. So whenever you take an action, it is through the decision of the spirit, but it is allowed by the spirit, or the decision of the soul, but it is allowed by the spirit to take place. It's a slightly different definition, but it is very close to the same definition. So, through his body, man is able to place himself for the time being in connection with the things, though through his soul he retains in himself the impression which they make on him. Through his spirit there reveals itself to him what the things retain in themselves. Only when one observes man in these three aspects can one hope to gain light on his whole being. For these three aspects show him to be related in a threefold way to the rest of the world. Through his body he is related to the objects which present themselves to his senses from without. The materials from the outer world compose this body of his, and the forces of the outer world work also in it. And just as he observes the things of the outer world with his senses, he can also observe his own bodily existence. But it is impossible to observe the soul existence in the same way. All occurrences connected with my body can be perceived with my bodily senses. My likes and dislikes, my joy and pain, neither I nor anyone else can perceive with bodily senses. The region of the soul is one which is inaccessible to bodily perception. The bodily existence of a man is manifest to all eyes. The soul existence he carries within himself as his world. Through the spirit, however, the outer world is revealed to him in a higher way. The mysteries of the outer world, indeed, unveil themselves in his inner being. But he steps in spirit out of himself and lets the things speak about themselves, about that which has significance not for him, but for them. Man looks up at the starry heavens, and the delight of his soul experiences belong to him. The eternal laws of the stars, which he comprehends in thought, in spirit, belong not to him, but to the stars themselves. Thus, man is a citizen of three worlds. Through his body he belongs to the world which he perceives through his body. Through his soul he constructs for himself his own world, and through his spirit a world reveals itself to him which is exalted above both the others. It is evident that because of the essential differences of these three worlds, one can obtain a clear understanding of them, and a man share in them only by means of three different modes of observation. And that's going to wrap up our introduction. Now, I didn't add a whole lot to this. There were parts that we stopped and talked about, but I didn't extrapolate too much because there will be more coming, hopefully. Right? I thought there were going to be more in the secret teachings of all ages, and while we did get to reveal quite a bit of truth in that, there was a lot more that was missing because apparently they don't believe in magic. Right? You have people out here performing ceremonial magic and they don't believe in it. Well, this guy believes in it. So hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit more value out of this particular set of readings than we got out of the secret teachings. Not that there's not things to be pulled from there, but hopefully there will be more here. 3 is an important number to me, right? I have 3 very important numbers: 1, 3, and 8. Now, 7 leads into 8. I believe that life is a fundamental harmonic, that there are 8 stages to pretty much everything, and that it can be signified by 7, but that means that 7 is the completion and 8 is the beginning of the new one. So if there is a new beginning on 7, then there's a step missing. And if there's the ending on 8, then there's a step missing. There is something to the 8-step harmonics of life. I have a whole video on that. Now, that is completely subjective. Once again, you can take it or leave it. I believe it. You don't have to. But 1 is the one. It is God. It is all things. 3 is this Trinity that we just talked about. And 8 is the other part of the manifestation process. It is the 7 internal chakras and the 1 external chakra that you have access to, that you can do things in your life with through your own force of will and the Spirit working with you. These are things that I believe are true, that I believe you can do in the same manner that I do them for myself. But once again, I cannot convince you of that. I am not here to convince you of anything. I am here to expound upon the things which I know and to try not to expound on the things that I really don't know, and hopefully cast a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.